May it please Your Honour, my name is Cashin, Cashion, initial L, and I appear for the defendant, Amigong Cremators, Proprietary Limited. In this matter, I'm instructed by Hobb, DeVille and BLZ Bubb Solicitors. The facts of this matter are well known to you. The essential elements are not in contention. The plaintiff purchased a BD60 cremator from the defendant for the purchase price of $122,000. $20,000 of that is outstanding. The machine was delivered and installed on the 27th of December 2017. The plaintiff seeks rescission of the contract, and the defendant seeks to stop the plaintiff from denying a collateral contract that arose on successful installation of the cremator. With respect, Your Honour, this matter can be distilled into two issues. The first is whether the claim by the plaintiff that the estimated cost of cremation provided by the defendant was misleading or deceptive under Australian consumer law. Second issue is whether the plaintiff should be able to avoid his obligation to pay for items he promised as an inducement to the defendant to enter into the original contract of sale. If I may deal with the cost of cremation first, the plaintiff relies on sections 4, 18 and 29 of the Australian consumer law to identify the complaint, and relies on sections 237(1) and 243A in seeking an order for rescission of the contract. The plaintiff's claim turns on whether the defendant's quoted estimate of cost for each cremation was a false or misleading representation of the plaintiff. Our common ground is that the defendant advised the plaintiff by email on 7 July 2017 that an estimate of cost per cremation using the BD60 machine manufactured by the defendant would be, quote, around $85. And various email exchanges occurred from that time. And in August 2017, the plaintiff requested confirmation by the defendant, again, of the cost per cremation. The response from the defendant reported an estimate was, quote, about $85, including gas, ashes container, and electricity. The response from the plaintiff was a counteroffer. He asked for a $45,000 discount on the BD60. The plaintiff's email also stated that if the BD60 were, quote, successfully installed, the plaintiff would purchase the latest Coffin Coaster automatic coffin positioning system for $30,000 and an ash processor for $15,000. The defendant accepted that offer, and a contract was signed for the purchase of the BD60 with 35% deposit paid on 28 September 2017. Your Honour, the plaintiff claims the defendant made a misleading representation of the costs per cremation and that the actual costs incurred were more around $435, including time to heat the BD60 to working temperature and additional labour. Your Honour, as noted by Justice Porter in the recent case of JA and JB Boyle Proprietary Limited and Major Furnace Australia Proprietary Limited 2019, Queensland District Court 75, paragraph 112, in Australia, there are issues of evidential and legal onus of proof in these type of matters that have not been, quote, authoritatively determined. In Boyle, Justice Porter elected to use the approach of R.V. Miller in Miller's Australian Competition and Consumer Law 41st edition in determining that the full evidentiary burden of proving a representation is not misleading falls to the defendant. I would invite Your Honour to take the alternative approach that Justice Porter considered and rejected, which is that of Justices Shepherd and Neve in Cummings and Lewis, 1993, Federal Court of Australia 149. This would permit Your Honour to consider the reasonableness of both parties, rather than the defendant being left to speak to the mind of the plaintiff. Your Honour would recognise certain classes of purchasers are required to exercise greater diligence in making financial decisions. If I could refer Your Honour to Awad and Twin Creeks Properties Proprietary Limited, 2012, New South Wales Court of Appeal 200, where land purchasers who relied solely on certain aspects of sale material made an unsuccessful misleading representation claim because they failed to seek and access readily available material independently. In Butcher and Lachlan Elder Proprietary Limited, 2004, High Court of Australia 60, Chief Justice Gleeson and Justices Hayne and Hayden stated that reliance on a non-specialist, in this example a suburban real estate agent, for matters of surveying or land title certification is not a proper basis for making decisions in real estate transactions. In reference to the present matter, the plaintiff failed to seek independent advice confirming the potential costs of the BD60. The defendants contend that the plaintiff was of a class of purchasers that a seller would reasonably attribute specialist knowledge of the industry, so including when to seek an independent expert opinion. The defendant submits that in this case, the reasonable person, as articulated by Justice Keane, as he was then, in Downey and Castle Hotels, Asia Pacific Proprietary Limited, 2005, Queensland Court of Appeal 199, would be a reasonable funeral director. It's not the responsibility of the defendant to assess the knowledge and experience of purchasers before making a sale. It's further submitted that the estimated cost provided to the defendants was not encompassing as indicated by language used. The estimate was based on an explicit set of parameters provided to the plaintiff during negotiation that was limited to, quote, gas, ashes container and electricity. No reference to the plaintiff's labour costs or preheating were included, which goes more toward the plaintiff's lack of industry knowledge than any attempt at deception. The plaintiff's emails also provide significant evidence that price and delivery time were primary considerations to the purchase. Cost per cremation was not even mentioned in his final email of 2017. In addition, the cost per cremation for plaintiff's old cremator was about $2,000, so the BD60 still provided significant savings. The defendant submits that there was proper reasonable basis for the estimation provided. The plaintiff was obliged as a member of a particular class of person, that being a funeral director, to have sought independent expert knowledge and advice if he did not have that himself. The plaintiff's reliance on the cost estimate provided by the defendant was only a limited factor in his decision. The defendant's cross-claim is that in satisfying the condition that the BD60 was successfully installed at the plaintiff's property, the plaintiff has an obligation to honour the promise to complete the purchase of the coffin coaster and the ash processor for a total amount of $45,000. The defendant seeks an order to stop the plaintiff from denying the contract so formed. Promise to purchase made by the plaintiff in September 2017 was clear and unambiguous, satisfying the criterion established by Lord Justices Bowen and Kay in Lowe and Bovary 1891, 2 Chancery Division of the High Court 82, as a basis of estoppel. This has been confirmed in Australia through cases such as Gumelli and Gumelli 1999, 196, Commonwealth Law Reports 101. The defendant further submits that by manufacturing keeping stock of the 2 machinery items, it is acted on the promise of the plaintiff, another requirement in Lowe and Bovary and expanded in Australia by Justice Priestley in Osthotel Proprietary Limited and Franklin Self-Serve Proprietary Limited 1989, 16 New South Wales Law Reports 582, 604. The defendant's significant discount on the purchase price also supports the contention the promise was acted on, and the fact that the plaintiff made the interim payment after installation is evidence that he considered it completed. The plaintiff was not compelled to make the offer to purchase additional machinery. The defendant accepted the offer and completed the precondition, consistent with the words of Chief Justice Mason in Commonwealth and Verwayan, 1990, 170 Commonwealth Law Reports 392 at 412. The defendant submits that the appropriate order of this Honourable Court is, quote, effective enforcement of a voluntary promise by the plaintiff. To conclude, Your Honour, the defendant submits on the first issue, the plaintiff has not demonstrated that the cost estimate was misleading, has not demonstrated a reliance on the cost estimate and should have made independent inquiries. However, if Your Honour were to find the estimates were misleading representations, the defendant submits the proper approach by this Honourable Court is to use the kind of Justice Wilcox in Reed Collins Marrickville Proprietary Limited and Henjo Investments 1987, Federal Court of Australia, and in subsequent appeals. The defendant submits Your Honour might consider that the rescission of the contract is not consistent with the claim of reliance. On the second issue, the plaintiff made a clear and unambiguous promise that resulted in several actions by the defendant that will have detrimental effect if the promise is not enforced. The defendant seeks the following orders. 1, that the claim of rescission of the contract by the plaintiff is dismissed, and 2, that the plaintiff is stopped from denying the contract for the sale of the additional machinery. Thank you, Your Honour.